Hi, you're listening to Collectively Speaking by the Birthday Collective, a bottom-up initiative to develop ideas about Singapore's future. Welcome to the space where birthday book alumni have conversations about the things that matter to them, to us, and to Singapore. We hope that you will be a part of the many conversations we will have, or perhaps to even start your own. And now, onward with the episode.
Welcome to Collectively Speaking. I'm Cherie, your host for today, and we're here to talk about family unplanned. In the studio, I have with me three very, very special guests. The reason why they're special is just because they're guests and writers in the book, but also they're really close friends of mine. I have Simar Kaur, I have Rain Khoo, and I have Joan Leong. So I'm going to just put Joan on the spot. Joan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, your essay, and what is it you do?
All right. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm actually a photographer, TV producer, and I also do digital and content marketing. I've worked on large format reality shows, lifestyle programs, and social documentaries. Being a content person, I really enjoy working with people to digitally transform their businesses through content solutions and social media engagement. When I'm free, I volunteer with a few causes I'm passionate about, providing help for needy children and families who are grieving. So, I have a love-hate relationship with fitness, mom to a teen, 3 aging dogs, and 2 birds. And I'm most happy with a good yakitori meal and binge-watching sitcoms.
All right, Joan, your piece in this year's birthday book, Actually Seeing Clearly. Can you tell us a little bit about what you wrote about?
All right, so I volunteer for an organization called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. It's a worldwide organization that of photographers. We help parents photograph their babies who have passed on in utero or at birth. This really helps them with the grieving process, and it gives them something to remember the child by.
I think that's really interesting actually, and must be really heavy going actually, that kind of work. But I think we look at children and pregnancy and birth. There are a lot of moments where things can kind of not quite go the way we like it. And I'm going to take that chance to kind of introduce Simar, who wrote a piece actually that moved me. Simar, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure thing. Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm Simar. My piece is in the family book. And what I wrote about was really just sharing my journey that I went through with IVF and the struggles that we had in conceiving and finally conceiving and then having a miscarriage and the hardship that came along with that before, deciding to try again and then to go on to have a successful pregnancy and then to eventually have my 3 kids.
The kids are super cute. Super, super, super cute.
Thank you.
I mean, in both yourself, Joan and Simar, I think in the work that you do in your personal life, for Simar's case, and Joan in the professional work, you see a lot of, Joan, you've seen a lot of grief. How does that shape you, and what does that teach you about the human journey, the family journey?
Well, to begin with, right, human beings are a lot more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. I've seen parents obviously very, very shattered, when the baby comes out and is lifeless, especially when it's really close to term and fully formed and, that they're just a mess. And I try to stay in touch with them. And, in the months later or years later, they get in touch and they tell me, either they get in touch or I see them on social media where they have another child and they've moved on and they don't forget the child, but, they continue living and making more memories. So as, for me, it's a very transformative journey, having volunteered with this for more than 10 years now, just watching how people triumph through adversity, and it makes you realize that we are actually a lot stronger than we give ourselves credit for.
How do you start actually? I mean, do you wake up one day and okay, this is what I want to do? Did something spark? Did something happen?
A good friend of mine, she sent me this link of the website and asked if said it might be something I'm interested in. And I clicked on it and I signed up immediately. I just instinctively knew that I wanted to give back in this way. Like, I've always wanted to do volunteer work, but I was never interested in cleaning things or playing games with people. I just didn't really like that, and this really reached out to me, and so I signed up for it. And I think only many years later I realized that probably on a subconscious level it had a correlation to the fact that I did have a sister who died, like I think a few days after birth, and we never talked about her, and we don't have any memories of her. Or even if, my parents talk about her, they get really upset. So we tend not to talk about her. And in fact, like many years ago, both my parents had separate incidents where, because them being Chinese and, with their religion, like they had this incident where through different mediums and channels, they were told that my sister was reaching out to them and she felt forgotten. So they had to do the traditional thing of burning her books and bags and everything. But, it made me realize that, when kids die, especially during our time or maybe in our culture, like people don't talk about it. Like it seems to be like a very taboo or shameful thing or an awful thing that has happened. And at the end of the day, right, like, no matter how short the life was, it was still a person. It was still your person, and they deserve to be remembered.
One of the things that struck me in Simar's essay when she talked about miscarrying was that it wasn't just the loss of a heart. It was literally a loss of a heartbeat. I think that was the actual words that you used.
Yes.
And that struck me. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey and what has that cost you and what has that given you, 3 kids aside, of course.
Okay. So going through IVF can be quite a scary, intimidating, and even quite an isolating experience. I found that it really helped to talk about it, like to talk to the people around you who've gone through it, to get advice from them, to find out what helped, what worked, what didn't, because when you share stories, it just makes things so much easier to bear. It makes pain easier to bear, I find. And I find that people don't talk about it enough because it's a very hard topic. It's very difficult to talk about things like that. But I found that it helped me, so I did it, and I realized that, hey, so many people around me had actually gone through these situations as well, but it's just that they didn't really share it. And the whole experience really taught me to be more empathetic, because you never actually know what a person is going through in their lives, So, yeah, these are some of the things that I learned. Now, my journey started, it actually spanned 6 years. I started off trying it at one clinic, IVF. We tried an IUI first, and then the doctor suggested, no, why don't you try IVF? So we did, and we didn't get any successful embryos with that one, which was devastating. And then we decided, okay, never mind, we'll go to another clinic that was strongly recommended. So we did, which was a lot more expensive, but we thought, never mind, it's going to be worth it. And to cut a very long story short, we got one successful embryo with that one. And we thought, that's fine, because, that's really all that we need. We need that one embryo that's going to implant and give us that child. And we eventually got pregnant, and we were so thrilled, really over the moon. But unfortunately, when we went for the 8-week appointment, there wasn't any heartbeat. So that led to a miscarriage. And I thought that that was just the end for me. Like, I didn't know how I was ever supposed to feel happy again, because it was so difficult to bear. Like, after going through all that, finally I was about to have this child, and it was taken away from me, But I told myself, look, I could either wallow in self-pity and keep asking why, or I could just pick myself up and move on. So I allowed myself to grieve, went through the grief cycle. Fortunately had some awareness of it because, we studied psychology in school, Cherie and I. So that gave me some, at least I understood what was happening and what I was feeling. But then I told myself, okay, I've got to be positive about it. I need to pick myself up, and I need to decide what my next course of action is. Do I want to try again? And if I do, then I have to look at it positively and keep a positive approach about it. So that's what I decided to do, And my husband was like, okay, are you sure you want to go through it again? If you don't, that's really fine, that kind of thing. And the family was very supportive, and I really appreciate that. They were behind us all the way, whatever we decided. So we decided, okay, we're going to go one more time. And if that doesn't work, it's okay, because there's another thing that we can consider, and that's adoption. Because there's so many beautiful kids in this world who who need parents. So, we will try one more time, but even if it doesn't, it's absolutely fine. We will look at adoption. So eventually we managed to succeed to have our 3 kids. And the whole process taught me really, like what Joan mentioned earlier, resilience, that we are able to overcome a lot more than we think we can. And that if you stay positive and keep your mindset positive, surround yourself with people who uplift you, good things will happen.
I like what you said. You have to be this resilience, right? I'm gonna bring in our third guest that has been quite silent on this, and it's an interesting guest. Rain and I go back a long way, actually, in time of uni time, actually. And Rain has you have your own story, right? About having pregnancies that are harrowing, to say the least, and the idea of resilience. I think your life is a great example of that. Maybe you can introduce yourself to our listeners and maybe share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your story.
Thank you, Cherie. Glad to be here. So my name's Rain. I love living intensely. I'm inspired by many things in life. New cultures, ideas, places, creativity. I live to eat and I enjoy exercising to be able to live my life to the fullest. So I'm a right and left brain person. I work on a mix of e-commerce and execution and creative direction for consumer goods. So for me, work is an enriching platform to help people realize their potential and help to improve other people's lives. So here's the hook and bait. I was actually born female and I am married with 2 lovely daughters. My essay is about my transition to also be a man and walking this journey with my partner. It tells about how being open, honest, and accepting each other has enriched our lives as a family together.
You have a very unique perspective then, right? I mean, there is, having known you, you've been thrown a lot of curveballs in your life, just to deal with from the outside. And then also to manage your transition with 2 girls in a society that doesn't always understand or have conversations about issues like that. How has that been like? And what has your experience, been, and how have you coped?
For transgender individuals, usually we already know that who we are on the inside, and it's a matter of like, do we choose to express that on the outside, or do we choose to suppress it for the rest of our lives as very unhappy people? So I think that after 20 years of suppression, with self-suppression really, that I was privileged enough to have the option to transition and to bring my family along in this journey together. And it hasn't been easy, of course. It's really been a journey that my community had to take together with me as they got used to my new name, they got used to my new pronouns, and we have frankly lost a lot of old friends along the way, because who I am is at odds with their own personal values. But I think that we have in fact gained a whole lot more by not just living, but learning how to live with joy and diversity. My partner and I have a relationship now that is hard to define, because he identifies as a straight man and I identify as a gay man. But we are still in marriage together, and we are still living together, and I live with my in-laws, in fact. We have actually many strong personalities at home, as with most families, I think, and even the quiet ones have very strong personalities, and we try to make space for everyone.
I think in all of your stories, one of the things that connects them all, and the reason why you're here, is everyone's families. I mean, there seems to be, anyway, in the greater everyday conversation of Singapore, there seems to be what a family should look like, right? A family doesn't have miscarriages. A family doesn't have a transgender parent. A family doesn't have death in the family, or doesn't have a baby kind of death. And we don't talk a lot about these things. I guess I want to ask you guys in turn, you guys are in your lives and in the work that you do and in your daily life, actually, you guys have to contend with this. What has that taught you? And what do you think people can learn from having a more open conversation about these things? And what are they losing by not having a conversation about these things?
I think adding on, going beyond what I do, volunteering with the kids, I also have to say I'm was previously divorced, and my daughter actually contributed a piece in the birthday book last year, 2018, about a different family unit also, because she has divorced parents and she doesn't think much about it because we have a great relationship, my ex-husband and I, and she doesn't feel like she's missing out on anything. Of course, she has got to go to 2 houses, but she thinks it's great, and I actually think that our relationship overall is a lot better than it would have if we had stayed together. So we are very open about it. But I think also at the same time, my it's not like my daughter goes around, telling the world that she comes from divorced parents, but to her this is just the way it is, like it's just normal, and we don't hide it, but it's I think she's a testament to how we make this unusual setup work. Yeah.
How about yourself, Simar?
For me, I think it's perhaps maybe we shouldn't be so embarrassed to ask questions or to reach out if we feel that maybe somebody's going through something that we can offer some help in, because you never know. Like I said earlier, you don't really know what people are going through in their lives. So if there's a hint that someone offers up, it's good to just reach out and try to, just share what you've been through, because sometimes that can help the other person to open up as well. And you never know whether that might be something that they were really hoping to hear.
I think sometimes just having a space to the Birthday Collective, one of the tenets that we hold is to create and hold space for critical, creative, but also uncomfortable conversations that we should have in society. And I think that for me is actually the most important thing. And that's why in the junior book, like with Claire's story, it's really to capture a voice that we don't always hear, or, to change a perspective, to give a perspective to a side that we don't always see. Rain's story to me was, having borne witness actually through the whole process, and to see it encapsulated in a piece in the 2019 book, actually, Narratives Undiscovered and Underway. And I thought that was so apt, actually, to hear about how you cope, but also how your family is coping and thriving, actually. And I think, what are the misconceptions do you think people have about an unusual family like yours, or a family unplanned like yours?
I think that people tend to think that when the parent decides to take a decision like this, people tend to force the judgment on you. They think that you're very irresponsible as a parent, very selfish to make such a decision. But actually, in allowing ourselves to live more fully and more authentically, we are trying to become better human beings in the process, and to actually show our children that you need to live honestly and truthfully to who you're called to be, because only then can you engage fully with the rest of the world.
Do you think that being in Singapore as opposed to being anywhere else in the world makes it a bit harder for someone like yourself?
I think that really in Singapore we are quite privileged in the sense that I can transition without any fear of bodily harm to myself. I can't say as much as someone who's trying to transit maybe in the States, because they might be threatened with whether it is rape, murder, that's very common in the transgender community, unfortunately. So at least in terms of public safety is not an issue. I think what is more uncertain is about the quiet discrimination. And for that, I have found that as long as when we respond openly, and to me, it's very much about reading a person's intent. If I find malice in the intent, I would move away. But if I find that it's one of curiosity or openness to understand, or even a gossipiness that sometimes is there, I'm very open to share about my story. And in fact, the birthday book has been a great way to have this kind of conversations which are usually unspoken about, and therefore just bring more understanding of who are transgender individuals. How does that play in a role in our life? Because I might be transgender, but I'm also a lot more than that as a human being. Yeah.
Yes. I think you wear those many, many hats very, very well. And sometimes I look at your life and I'm like, my God, how do you do so much?
And Rain, I love what you just said about how you use the opportunity to share with those who really are interested. Because it's like you're a living example, and you're able to share that you're really living proof, I think, for your kids as well, that you should believe in yourself and really kind of like show your true self, and then that's wonderful.
I think the word that keeps coming up is, other than resilience, is being authentic to yourself. Whether it's a transition journey, whether it's about just putting it on a table and say, let's talk about it. If you have questions, ask. Because I think sometimes people are curious about what they see, and they're not really quite sure how to make of it. Even with something as almost every day as like miscarriage, it happens fairly often, right? I think people just there's a lot of fear and apprehension about asking can I ask a question, and things like that. I think that's something for me that really struck me. Joan, I know you've worked on some of the media projects that you've had, and you've worked on helping people tell their story, whether it's another transition story or how does being able to help them tell a story help you and help the story in itself?
Yeah, well, so actually, interestingly enough, I did work on a social documentary about a man transitioning to be a woman, and through my interviews with them, I grew as a person, because I initially thought, wow, the wife, who's actually a friend of mine, I thought, wow, she's the one keeping it together. She's accepting her husband for who he is. And when I started interviewing her now, I realized that it did not matter what she looked like. She was still the same person. She still had the same personality, the same hobbies. She just wanted to wear heels and put on makeup and be referred to as a woman. And I enjoy telling these stories, and because I grow as a person, but I also want to teach people that it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be, to say it's weird. Like, this is actually really normal, and to give a deeper insight to what these so-called taboo topics are. So like with this documentary that I did, and even with the photos of the babies, like, it's not taboo, the parents, there's some parents who are actually very open. They even post the pictures that I took on social media and saying, this is our beautiful son, we lost him, and they still openly talk about him. And even when they have an angel baby after that, they say, she shared the same womb as her brother, and he's and she looks like him, and they acknowledge the presence of the child. And being open and being and for me, being able to tell these stories, I find very meaningful, because sometimes people can't tell their stories, and I'm a content person. I love telling stories, so that's how I give back, and that's why I do it.
And I think, Joan, that's so powerful, because sometimes it's so hard for the parent to be repeating the same story again and again to their friends, who generally want to know with good intent.
Yes.
But by sharing that image on their Facebook, they are able to stand alongside with the parent and also to partake in their sorrow.
Yeah. Yes.
How do you, in your daily lives, Simar and Rain, how do you make that story real? I know, like in your case, your children were part of the process. How do you honor that story and that journey with them, or how have you done so?
They were 3 and 5 years old when I decided to transit with my partner's permission and support. And we only shared with them what at their tender age they were able to take on. And it really surprised me how even my younger child was so insightful in her understanding of gender that they were the one that gave me the name of Maddie, which is mommy and daddy. So they understood that mommy's not going to go away completely, but mommy is going to transition to be a man. So, and when asked to describe what gender I was, I am, they said, you're both male and female, which is quite true. That's how I identify myself, as more of bigender, but male, socially presenting. Yeah. So I think it's allowing them to have that space to express themselves, to clarify that they have actually really blessed me along this journey. Yeah.
That's really lovely, Rain. For me, I try to keep it real by sharing openly. about my experience. I share what I went through. I share how it was like, because people are often a little bit apprehensive about starting the whole IVF process, and they're so fearful about the jabs, as I was. So I share how it was. You might have to jab
so
yourself
hard.
on the left on one day, on the right on one day. I shared how I used to keep track of it, because sometimes you lose track, that kind of thing. So I do it by sharing openly. And we will eventually tell our kids as well, because I don't think that there's any shame in that. We want to be open with them and to share with them eventually when they're old enough to understand as well.
I think all of you have really owned the journey you've been on and who you are, what the person you've become, that this journey has brought you on. I think, what kind of resource do you think have been useful for you in your journey? Whether it's the work you do or the journey you've done, the journey you're on, and things like that. What resource has helped you to thrive and to overcome, or to keep on?
So for me, what was especially useful was having support groups, and these were available like on some Facebook support groups for those going through, infertility processes and things like that. And also WhatsApp groups, like when people connect you to people who've been through it. I found that to be especially useful, because you are able to just ask any questions to someone who's actually just recently gone through the process. So that was very helpful.
And for me, it was relatively uncharted waters, so I didn't really had a ideal of what should be the outcome. So I could only work towards the best possible outcome by stage determining what could be predicted, or otherwise finding resources, praying for wisdom, and being open to possibilities. And that has made me very comfortable with uncertainty now. I have been incredibly blessed with support from friends, and I've reconciled myself also spiritually with God through help from the Free Community Church. So nowadays we have a WhatsApp group of parents who transited after having kids, and we're called transparents. Having such a community while I transited would have helped, and my thanks goes out to Jun Chua of T Project for linking us parents together.
That's nice. For me, well, I guess because of what I do, it's not really a personal journey for me.
It still is, right? I mean, you're part of you're still part of that process.
But I actually see myself as a resource for these parents, especially when I meet them and they, either like they know like the child's not going to survive the pregnancy, and I do talk to them, and I see myself as a resource as to, what I have witnessed, what I have experienced with other parents, and I see myself as, being able to guide them through this process as much as I can, at least, even when the child is born, and I actually talk them through the process and the photography process, and they actually appreciate it. So I see myself as a resource for them.
So in a way, right? You know that although it's dark and it's difficult now, you've seen other parents come through that.
Yes. So I guess it helps. I mean, and even with other people who have not engaged me to take photographs, and they do reach out, and they do ask if I could recommend someone, or if I could just share something. So I see myself as being able to share that with them.
Well, on that note, there are 4 more resources that you can now have. You have Simar's essay, Rain's essay, and Joan's essay, and this podcast. Thank you guys very much for joining me today. That's all the time we have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Cherie.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Collectively Speaking by the Birthday Collective. We aim to be a brain, heart, and hand trust for Singapore, focusing on the gifts we can offer to future generations. To find out more, visit our website, thebirthdaycollective.com, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Birthday Collective. If you enjoyed this episode, do subscribe and drop us a review.